This is the Don't Hide the Scars podcast, presented by Pain, Parents and Addicts in Need. Joining the Don't Hide the Scars podcast, the mastermind of the Recover brand and host of the Begin Again podcast. And I say, friend Gary Menkes, how are you?
I'm well. I think we're up. Yeah, I call you dear friend now. I don't know if that's okay with you. And, one of the best guys I know, Jay. So it's a pleasure to be here.
I concur. We will have dear friend there now. So let's dive in. Great topic I wanted to touch on. Especially for people that are new to recovery, there's all kinds of different modalities, and you and I are supportive of it. But both the guys that helped us was a traditional 12-step program, especially at the beginning of it. So a lot of misconceptions. So let's do what you should know. 12-step program. If you're entering AA, NA, there's a fentanyl anonymous program now. So all these different ones, all very much based essentially off the AA program. Bob and Bill that started, wonderful book. But I think one of those biggest misconceptions that I get all the time is, well, I'm not religious. Well, you don't have to be.
That's right. I that was a thing for me too at the beginning. Not because I wasn't religious, because, well, I was in and out too for a while, right? But I was also such a, how do I describe this? I was such a skeptical man. Like, I didn't trust anybody or anything. And when I say like that's how I was wired. In fact, it's still kind of alive in me today that I have to work through. But kind of my upbringing and my conditioning. So, when a guy came and said, "Hey, here's my number, call me," like, when every instinct in my being was to tell the guy to keep walking, like he's got the wrong person. And when it came to the religious part, right? And what happened to me was, and not that I was fighting it, just that, I wasn't like a believer. And it was taught to me, and you take suggestions. I think that's another part. Like, you don't have to, it's not like do this and don't do this. Take the suggestions that work for you. And so early on, Jason, they said, you can make, your higher power can really be anything you want right now. It can, and so you can make this meaning like your higher power. And I did that early on because I also felt when I finally, and this is, 19 years ago, that, I think I'm feeling a little different inside. I'm feeling some kind of shift. I'm feeling something in this room, and that's real, whatever you want to call white light, whatever, pink cloud, all those names. It was real, and I had said I was in and out, when everything shifted, when I really gave up. And I gave up to God. I asked to God. I was sitting in my apartment on West 12th Street. I said, "God, I don't want to do this anymore. Please help me." And lo and behold, go figure. And I've heard this story so often, that was the last time I ever had a drink or a drug. Now, it wasn't that simple. It wasn't just that, "Hey, take it away." It was a lot of work I had to do. But as far as the religion part, like, you can make those meetings. If we're talking about the 12-step meetings, you can make the higher power portion, whatever you need it to be, especially early on. And I came around. And I'll say one last thing is, I was such a thick-headed dude, and I was just there to stop drinking. That was it. I feel like I was a year into sobriety when, like, my eyes like really opened up. I'm like, wait a minute, there's a God, like, I'm finding God in here. There's a gigantic God portion. And then when you go through the book, it's all about a higher power. It's all about spirituality and God, for me, of my understanding. And so, there's no right or wrong way really to do it. Just do what works for you and keep coming back.
Yeah. Well, and I think the important part is that, with the 12 steps is it's laid out to rewire the brains that we have. We've been living in such a subconscious state, and it's all about pulling it into a consciousness. I would say a God consciousness, because that's me. But for the person, maybe I've known atheists that 12-step programs have worked magical for, and really, like I tell people, higher power, just look at it as greater collective, that you are wanted, you are a part of something, there is something rewarding, and it's going to take connectivity for these things that are magical inside you, wonderful, brilliant, beautiful about you, the individual, to come to fruition.
Mm.
So if you treat it, like you said, the meeting in that way, the group, the collective, the whatever it is, it's a beautiful way of pulling all the behavior that you've had subconsciously into a conscious view so that you can see it, know it, understand it, hear from others how they navigated it, so that you too can start to live consciously in a way that alcohol, drugs, etc., sex, money, whatever the issue is, that no longer becomes as appealing as another way, a better way, a real rewarding, natural, chemical coming way of life and being, so that all of a sudden you take this good life, this good way, then it becomes your subconscious nature and now your way of being. Our being used to be drugs, alcohol, etc. Now our being is anything but that. It's just not a presence in our life. And not that it, I know with you, it still might spike up, but the story plays out pretty quick, right? It'd be like, I'm
Oh
on
yeah.
vacation and, the missus and the kids are over there. I'm by the pool. Yeah, I can order a margarita. Oh, wait, you can get a good chuckle like instantly. No, I couldn't because I know exactly where that goes. And this vacation
Yeah.
goes to you know what. And so does the rest of my life. So I think it's just the hugest component of that, of understanding, the greaterness of your life beyond you and how it is important for us to show up because of the impact that we do have on others and then the internal impact as well. So for me, it's kind of, I explain it to that way with people. Then eventually some of them be like, oh, I have an understanding of God to my understanding, or I had a spiritual awakening or whatever it is. But like, excuse me, a spiritual awakening is not a requirement. It's a
Right.
gift, and hopefully you have it, but it's not a requirement. It's not like I must be doing this wrong. No, no.
You just gave me chills a little bit when you were talking about, that way of life, because when I came in, and for many of us, when we come in, it's the only way of life. There's not even a, there's not even a potential of another life. It's the only thing we've known, right? And when your muscle memory is the same for however many years or for your whole life, basically, right? We started whenever I started drinking early up until you know, I should have stopped there a lot earlier. But in hindsight, I did stop at a young age. I was in rehab as a 26-year-old man. Last time I had a drink, I was 31 years old. But when I was saying earlier before, just what you were saying, like there was no other way, and I'm feeling so much like gratitude right now because oh my God, I found such another more beautiful way. It's like my vocabulary has changed a bit. I wasn't a I start my day every morning in prayer. Was said get on your knees, put your shoes underneath your bed. Again, here's a suggestion: put your shoes underneath your bed. So the first thing you do in the morning is you're on your knees and say a prayer and ask God to keep you sober today. And I
Yeah,
did that, and I didn't drink that day. I was like, and if you didn't drink at the end of the day, get on your knees and thank God for keeping you sober today. I'll never forget. Like I was like, did that work? I think that worked today because it was like the first day that I tried it and I didn't drink. And I was like, I'm going to do that again. And, 19 years later, again, I saw this too. It doesn't matter the number, it doesn't matter the time. It really doesn't. Excuse me. But those are still part of my morning and evening prayers. That's still part to this day.
yeah,
So it's an amazing life we get. There's no big sign, right, Jason? Like, hey, come on into this meeting. You're going to completely change your life.
yeah,
But that's what happens. That's what happens to all of us. And things really changed for me when I had kind of that blind faith, kind of what you were talking about when, or what I was talking about as well. When a stranger's saying, hey, this is what worked for me, I was like, you know what, I've tried it and nothing works. So it seems to work for these people. I'm going to listen to some of the suggestions.
yeah, yeah. And it was something I heard the other day that I think is really valuable to, that's one of the misconceptions, especially with the 12 steps themselves, is it's about uncovering, discovering, and discarding, right? So if we go through all the 12 steps, which we could lay them out for everybody, or we'll just put them in the show notes so you can read it. A lot of it, like let's talk about the amends, the people that maybe, we need to make apologies to or would like them, but, we have to let go of that too. It's about uncovering the area of, okay, I understand now why. Great. Now let's discover, okay, with all that knowledge of the why, what do I do with it? And then, once you identify this was the negative nature for me and how thus that negative nature for me rolled into the rest of my life, how do I just completely eject and discard that behavior?
Yeah.
And it's not that they all go away. It's just now all of a sudden we build tools like what do we say? Stinking thinking, right? So when something pops in our heads, it's not so good, negative self-talk or whatever it is. How then do we process it? And through the practice of doing so, it just becomes a quicker process. Like I don't
Right.
get held down too long. It
Yeah.
just, but that's taken practice. It's not easy.
I wanted to start this program because many months ago I was dealing with some veterans. I just didn't like the way they were being treated. I didn't like the services that were being provided, for the lack of a better term. I think we need to do a better job with our veterans, and in essence, that's why I decided to start this. My biggest concern with veterans and substance use, especially with opioids, is that they're not getting the proper treatment. And it seems like for years they have not received the proper treatment for that. We decided to make sure that our veterans are going to be able to get the services they need in order to combat their addiction.
I had to work through it all. It's all about, repetition, repetition. I'm more quickly to apologize when I've wronged someone, especially if it was unintentional, right? I can't think of the last time I intentionally said something hurtful to someone. But now if it's intentional, well, trust me, when I was a drinker, I was not the nicest person. So I would say some pretty mean things, right? Because I was so angry and not healthy anger. And so now it's just, how can I do that? How can I work to make this right? So it's just about that process of improving who and what we are as a conscious being of our behavior, how it may affect others, how others' behaviors may affect us, and where do we draw that line of boundaries and accessibility? It's just really healthy building tools for anyone. I always say 12-step program, be great in high school.
Yeah. It's fine. You're making, I remember when I first, started coming around, and I'm going through the steps, and I'm lying in bed and I'm reading the 12 steps, and like a couple of days sober, to my girlfriend, who's my wife now. And she's reading the 12 steps, and she's a civilian. She's not one of us. She's a, complete normal, she doesn't really drink at all, which is crazy, but she,
Wait,
yeah,
isn't it funny how that's crazy to us?
it is. It's still crazy. And I think that'll always kind of be crazy. Just the way you drank, right? Because there was one speed and that was it. But she was going through this, she read the 12 steps. She's like, wow, I think everyone can probably benefit to go through these steps, which kind of ringing what you're saying. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right. Maybe you don't have to, get arrested at 16 and all the other stuff that comes with it, right? And me too. I was very angry too. And once I was a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I could be the happiest guy in the place, and a drop of a dime, I'd be the nastiest dude in the whole place, and probably everyone would know it. But you mentioned, you brought the word resentment up, and as far as, you're right, it doesn't just happen overnight. It's a process, at least for me, right? It takes time. It takes time to start working on this stuff. But the light bulb, if you will, or the epiphany for me went up. There was things that I've seen or happened to me that what was my part? Where am I? Why do I have to make why do I have to make amends here? I didn't have any part. All I did was I was just there, right? And you start digging a little more, and while maybe I still, you look at yourself a little, do you look at your side of the street a little bit differently? And the light bulb went on for me when it was brought to my attention, like, Gary, you can hold on to this resentment for the rest of your life, and you can never move on. You can be a miserable dude because of it. Or you can find a way to come to peace with it, to have maybe some kind of closure on it, and move forward and have a productive, good life. The epiphany was, the only person right now that this resentment is affecting is you, is me. So, again, I was a stubborn dude. I also, like, for a while, I was like, yeah, cool. I'm going to hold on to this for the rest of my life. I'll be miserable. I don't care. But the process and, your eyes start to open a little bit different. You start to look at things a little bit differently. And like you said, there's so much, there's this umbrella of putting down the drink or the drug is huge. It's a huge, beautiful umbrella. And there's so much here to unpack. And, what are the sayings which I hated all the sayings at the beginning, but they all started making sense. Like, hey, I wish you a long, slow recovery. I was like, long, slow. I was like, who is this? Beat it, and I totally know what that means today. Like I
Yeah.
totally get it. And I will probably wish other people long,
Yeah.
slow.
Yeah, this isn't the magic pill. We
Yeah,
already tried that, right? We
we
wanted to
did
change.
over and over and over. Yeah,
Yeah, we wanted to alter exactly how we thought and felt in each moment, or we were willing to accept that our thinking was changing if we got the desired feeling that we wanted, which is you kind of start to break that and reverse it in the realization that, oh, I'm going to think a certain way, act a certain way, and then this is the result of the feelings that I get or the ability to navigate them. And it's such a huge part of the process is really going through that switch, that reversal, that the reward isn't on the front end with the rush of chemicals. I mean, you just think alcohol or, doubling, quadrupling the rush of dopamine into our brain.
right.
Horrible for our brain, horrible for our body,
Mhm.
unsustainable. That's the big, drop off the cliff. Like, okay, how do I then have behaviors, actions, and everything else where the natural chemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, where I can get those, but it's going to come on the back end of actions and behaviors, like both you and I like to get out, hike, walk, I mountain bike, whatever it is. These things come at the back end. I get that totally natural, awesome, in nature beauty thing at the end reward, not the consequences are different, right? I might end up with sore legs the next day. I'll take that over being sick for 3 4 5 days, or that desire to how can I get rid of that sickness? Oh, I'll just do that same thing again and then
Do it
again
again.
and then again and then avoiding this sickness over and over while I'm just making myself sicker. I'm making myself sicker by trying to avoid what I perceive as sickness. And
That's what we're doing. We're avoiding, right? We don't want to feel, right? As soon as we started feeling that, when you start maybe sobering up a little bit and you start realizing what happened or what you did or where were you, like, what do you want to do? Like, just go right back into it so you don't feel, you don't even have to think about it. You put it over there and right. And next thing you know, you're out for, days and days and days and who knows where you end up. That's the great, right? The cunning, baffling, powerful part. Like I had that part so nailed, right? The people that closest to me, like, whoa, cause like I said earlier, things dropped, switched on a dime and it was made no sense. I think I might have said this to you once before too, is, in the big book, we can say that here, right? In one of the 12-step programs, they talk about a jaywalker, right? And the jaywalker, he crosses the street and he gets hit by a car and goes to the hospital and, all right, you're good now, but, don't jaywalk. And like, all right. But the very next day, what does he do? He gets out of the hospital and he jaywalks again. He gets hit by a bigger car and, on and on and on and does it like, 10 days in a row, whatever. I'm kind of paraphrasing. Then he gets by a bus. And I remember, I think the same night, actually, that's so weird, is reading the jaywalker story to her. And she's like, holy cow, like, dude, like that, you're the jaywalker. I was like, I'm the jaywalker. Yeah.
yeah, that's I can even see the bus coming, but I don't care. It'll stop for me.
Yeah, I
No.
don't care. Yeah.
Yeah, we
Maybe we
don't.
don't want to care. Maybe we don't want to feel. Maybe we want it to hit it. Like maybe somewhere we want to just get hit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. But jumping back, the misconceptions around it again. It's just a beautiful process. The other one that I hear a lot of, well, it seems cultish. No, no, far from it. Far
Yeah.
from it. There's not nobody's showing up with Kool-Aid at these things.
Yeah.
It's just helping you build new principles and a way of being.
Yeah.
Obviously, left to our own devices, we weren't doing the best. So we do need, for lack of a better word, and I actually think it's a beautiful word, reprogramming.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Cultish. That was a big thing at the beginning too. Oh, it's a cult, and it's really there's nothing. It couldn't be farther from the truth. It's right. It's I'm laughing tongue in cheek too, because when I was in and out for 4 years, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have to stop drinking one day, but I'm never going back to those people. Right? Never go back. And what happened? I was on my hands and knees, and I called a in a group, and I went crawling back. But it's not a cult. I'm left. There's some really kind of big clicky meetings in New York City, just like I'm sure your coast as well. Like see some celebrities and all this stuff, but it's actually probably the farthest thing from a cult. And if I'm looking on my phone now, I still have my best boys, and on a text group that bust each other chops all nonstop all day. But some of my very, very closest friends, people that know me the best, things I talk about, fatherhood, being a husband, being real life stuff. Those are my sober friends. Those are my sober buddies, because they've been through it, and so it's not a cult. In fact, I do say this too. I'm in a part of a group, Monday night group. There's a small group of us that started in COVID. Said we got to do something. We're all locked up. We got to have like a meeting, and this is from like my sponsor, and this is where we 4 or 5 years later. We're reading some. It's not even quote unquote sobriety books on Monday, but I'm part of this kind of quasi sober group dudes book club, if you will. And Jason, if you told me that 19 years ago that you're going to be in a book club with like 8 other dudes reading a book on online every Monday night at 6, I'm like, what happened to me? What happened to that guy? And the truth is, it's one of the best things. I love it, because it's continuing the process of growth and try to, the stuff that we're talking about, like, because we're still human beings, right? And so I'm getting off the cultish topic, but my point is, it's the greatest. You would, hands down, and I have no problem saying this, you will meet some of the most amazing people you'll ever meet in your whole life that will be lifelong friends with you.
New Perceptions North, the premier drug and alcohol treatment and recovery center in Central California. A full continuum of medically supervised, top-quality care with programs for detox and patient residential treatment with dual diagnosis, intensive outpatient treatment, sober living support groups, and more. New Perceptions North provides adult men and women with the highest caliber of professional health care, treating each client with compassion and respect, in a safe, comfortable environment to begin the process of recovery to proudly create and sustain a life without addiction. Call 559-978-1507 or visit newperceptionsnorth.com. No, and I think that's perfect to show that how uncultish it is. I put it to someone the other day. I was like, it's a beautiful place where I got help moving furniture. Like, what the hell do you mean? I'm like, okay, so if it's this situation, emotion, or whatever I'm struggling around, if I got to move that heavy armoire by myself, it sucks. But if I get 4 other sets of hands to help me move it, that thing gets light and moves real quick. Mm-hmm. And when I can honestly just say, I need help with this, and then there's those other people that are like, oh, I've been there too. Here's what, kind of what I went through when when you can get a sidebar. Or that's my favorite time after, share is getting a little of that coffee or hot chocolate, water. I don't care what it is, the cookies or whatever, where you can actually have that crosstalk with people. It's like that. It helps lighten that load. And when you get that opportunity to also, when somebody shares their armoire that isn't moving, and you get to be a part of those hands, it's just community. It's like, all right, you got camaraderie, community, vulnerability, honesty. It's like you might get the same thing from a softball league, but I don't know about that. So, give it a go. Stick with it. It's just kind of like a cool situation to hang out. And my favorite part now is when I do show up for anything, is not because of necessarily what I need to share, but being there for someone else. And showing up for other people, which that wasn't in my nature. My kids were always clothed, fed, housed, got their education, other than that one time I was too hungover to get them to school, which unfortunately they still remember. So it's like, for me, it's just the being able to be there, be of service to someone else, even if I have very little to share. Like, sometimes it's a topic night and I just go, I don't have anything on this right now, but I'm just glad to be here. I'm glad to see, Bob over here, day one, man, way to go. Proud of you. It's
Yeah.
just as cool as Jim's, 25 years.
Right.
So it's the choice today.
You bring up and what I was thinking as well is it's community, and that's the importance of people sharing. In your example, moving the armoire, and that's the beauty of the meetings. You have, let's say, not that I've been through a divorce, I haven't, but like, if someone's going through a divorce. Oh, hey man, I've been through that too. Or someone's dealing with, the being in court and then they're in trouble still. Okay, I was in the same. There's so many things when you raise your hand and say, hey, I'm going through this, that other people, right? And when we're in it, Jason, right, we think no one knows. It's just us. No one knows what we're going through. And then you share just a little bit and people come to you and say, hey man, I've been very similar situation. Here's what I did. And then boom, like they're over, like you said, they're having their coffee after the meeting or their hot chocolate. Like, so that's not the cult. That's a beautiful community, right? And there's different pockets, right? And people go through things in life. And so everyone's helping each other out in some way, right? There's people that have been through what you have been through, and they are just there to share how they got through it, and maybe the way they did, or people they know can help you as well.
Yeah. Well, I know we're coming to a close here, and my encouragement is, and I'll take this from the beautiful Arlena Allen, a mutual friend of ours, said 12 steps, even if it's another modality that you approach with, be it smart recovery or therapy, whatever it is, it's a worthy endeavor. And I say absolutely 100%, at least give it a good 90 days, give it 3 months. And guess what? Maybe if there's a meeting that doesn't seem to work for you, try another one. It's
Yeah,
okay. It's okay. I've test driven many cars in my life before I bought my last one. It's like, it's okay. Give it a shot. So yeah, it's just a beautiful, worthy endeavor. And it's just, that help of being able to process, like you said, that community. You're not going to find anyone in any meeting that hasn't been through what you've been through exactly or similar.
100%.
And no reason to compare either. Oh man, well, theirs is more gnarly or less gnarly. Doesn't matter. Situations are situations, and you and I have seen people on the brink of having been through some of the worst atrocities in childhood, adulthood, and everything else, and turn their lives around to be like, I love, and I know this is for me, and I'm pretty darn sure for you. Like, I love who I am today. I genuinely like myself. I like
Yeah,
my life. It is not perfect. There's much I hope that improves, changes. I'm open to the unknown that is coming. All of it. Like, I like my life. Is there moments where hey, I'm sad, angry, scared, whatever it is? Sure, sure. But I'll embrace that too.
absolutely. I totally agree. You're making me think of, and it was someone I had on. She said, you're at least you got to pass the mirror test. Actually, this one was for my mother-in-law, who's again, she's another civilian who I love so dearly. But she had said, listen, you got to be able to pass the mirror test. You got to be able to look yourself in the mirror and be okay with that person. I
Mhm.
wasn't okay with that person. I wouldn't even look at myself in the mirror, right? And now I look at myself in the mirror every day. Say, hey man, I love you, man. But what I was gonna go with before also, which I love this and it just works for me, is I had a friend and she has a picture of her like five-year old self. She keeps it close, and when things are piling up, or she's not feeling good about herself, or she's feeling down, she just looks at her younger self. And I do this too. I don't have the picture, but I just have it in my head, and I have the same picture. And I just, hey man, you know what, kid, you're doing great. You're doing great, kid. Keep going. And I didn't have that before. And I got that in sobriety. So in the cult that it's not.
And I think that 5-year-old me and 5-year-old you would have
Oh,
gotten along really well, and
me
we would
too.
dig our adult selves because my 5-year-old me with all the Star Wars Legos and
I
posters
love it.
and puzzles and Disney stuff would go like, "You're a pretty rad dude. Like this
Yeah,
guy's pretty
man.
cool."
He
So
is pretty cool. I want to hang out with that guy.
yeah, right. I mean, you got the Michael Jordan stuff in the background with Kobe and the Yankees and all that. Like, yeah, you and I get along now, and we would have gotten along then, and that's pretty cool.
I agree with that, my man, for sure.
Before we wrap up, tell people not only about the Begin Again podcast, but they may have seen me in some of the video versions of Don't Hide the Scars wearing the Recovery Brand shirt. So let's start with the podcast. People want to connect there. What's the best way, social media, and how can they find it, audio and video? And then we'll talk Recover Brand.
I appreciate it. Yeah, the Begin Again podcast. That's the handle, the Begin Again podcast. I'm mostly on Instagram across all socials, but I kind of hang out the most on Instagram, and I'm across all platforms. It's a weekly show. It's a great show. Got to meet people like yourself and become, as we said, the top dear friends now, which is incredible. And we recently launched Recover Brand, which is rcvrbrand.com, and it's for the Recover Out Loud community. We're just getting going, and go check it out. The handle there is also on Instagram and across the socials is RCVR brand. So RCVR_brand. Go give us a check out.
Yeah, I mean, everything from hats, T-shirts, got some athletic wear, and it's just going to grow from here. So I'm proud of you for stepping into that. I know it's something you'd been wanting to do, and just support of the missus is just like, we're gonna do this. Like, I don't know how it's gonna go, but I feel that I've got to do it.
That's it. That's spot on. That's exactly how it happened. I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to worry about the how. I'm going to learn as much as we can and try to help some people along the way and raise some awareness and eliminate the stigma.
Yes, sir. Well, we thank you all for listening to the Don't Hide the Scars podcast. If first time on Apple Podcast or Spotify, hit that follow button. And don't forget, got a YouTube channel, youtube.com/@pain-nonprofit. You can go there and subscribe, not only to full episodes, we put out clips in short form on there that are also helpful, a lot of the nuggets from each and every conversation. So please go and subscribe today.